Welcome to the Power Book of Podcasts. Unlock your potential with powerful book summaries that inspire personal growth and broaden your understanding of the world. Each week, we explore life-changing ideas, from leadership to mindset strategies to keys for happiness and success. Learn actionable insights to apply in your daily life. Join our growing community of thinkers and seekers. Like, comment, and hit that subscribe button now. It's time to supercharge your mind with the Power Book of Podcasts.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're going deep today into the entire history of humankind.
Wow, ambitious.
Well, we won't actually need a time machine, thankfully.
Right.
We'll be using Yuval Noah Harari's Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind, to guide our exploration. Ready to uncover some fascinating insights about our species and its evolution, and just how we got to where we are today.
Absolutely. I think listeners will be surprised by some of the things we uncover along the way. You know, it's not always a straightforward story.
Right.
For example, did you know that Homo sapiens weren't the only humans
Okay.
walking the earth?
Yeah. I mean, I knew about Neanderthals, but I always thought they were kind of like
Our
ancestors.
Yeah, that's a common misconception. Think of it more like distant cousins.
Okay.
Or even sibling species, really. For thousands of years, multiple human species coexisted, like Neanderthals, Homo erectus.
Yeah.
They had their own cultures and tools and ways of life. The intriguing question is, what happened to them? Why are we the only humans left standing?
That's a good question. Does Harari have any ideas about what might have happened? Did Homo sapiens just outcompete them, the other human species?
Well, there are a few competing theories. One is called the replacement theory. And that theory suggests that Homo sapiens and other humans were simply too different to coexist. Maybe we couldn't interbreed, or perhaps conflict drove them to extinction. So it kind of paints this picture of Homo sapiens sweeping across the globe and replacing other human species entirely. However, a 2010 study of the Neanderthal genome really shook things up.
Ooh, a plot twist.
Yeah, right. So this study revealed that present-day humans of European and Asian descent actually carry Neanderthal DNA.
Wow.
That means there was interbreeding between Homo sapiens and Neanderthals.
Interesting.
Yeah, which supports the interbreeding theory, the idea that we didn't just replace other human species,
Right.
but absorb them in a way through intermixing.
So maybe I have a little Neanderthal in me.
Maybe.
That's fascinating. Makes you wonder just how complex the story of human evolution really is. But then, what was it about Homo sapiens that led to our dominance? Why us?
Harari points to our unique language.
Our language.
Yeah. You might assume that language developed for practical purposes, like warning others about danger or coordinating hunts.
Makes sense.
But it probably served another, even more critical function: gossip.
Gossip? Seriously?
I know, right?
So you're telling me that idle chatter around the campfire helped shape the course of human history?
It might sound surprising, but think about it. Language allowed Homo sapiens to form larger, more complex social structures. We could share information about who was trustworthy, who was a skilled hunter, who was causing trouble in the group. And it was this ability to communicate about social dynamics, that facilitating cooperation, strategizing, and ultimately our success as a species.
So in a way, language acted as a kind of social glue, binding Homo sapiens together in ways that other human species weren't capable of.
Exactly. But Harari takes this idea a step further with his concept of imagined realities. This is where things get really interesting.
Okay, I'm all ears. What are imagined realities?
It boils down to our unique ability as Homo sapiens to believe in things that don't physically exist. Things like gods, nations, corporations, even money. These are all constructs of our collective imagination. Take, for example, the Pujol lion. It's not a real lion, of course, but it represents a powerful company. It holds meaning because we, as a society, imbue it with meaning.
So it's like a shared story that everyone agrees on.
Right.
Even though it's not real in a tangible sense.
Exactly.
It has a real impact on our behavior.
Precisely. And this ability to create and believe in shared myths is incredibly powerful. It allowed Homo sapiens to cooperate on a larger scale, to build empires, create complex social hierarchies. Think of something like Hammurabi's Code, one of the earliest examples of a written legal code.
Oh, right, Hammurabi's Code. It was basically a set of laws.
Right.
I don't really know much about it.
It was much more than just a list of rules. It established an entire system of justice and social order. For example, The code outlined different punishments for different offenses,
Okay.
and even placed different values on the lives of different people, depending on their social status.
That sounds a bit harsh, but I guess every society
Yeah,
has to have some kind of system
right.
in place to maintain order, right?
That's true. Although it does raise some interesting questions about how our concepts of justice and equality have evolved over time. But for now, let's focus on how these shared myths, these imagined realities, played a crucial role in the next major turning point in human history,
Okay.
the agricultural revolution.
The dawn of farming. I've always seen that as a positive development,
Mm-hmm.
settling down, growing crops, creating stability.
That's certainly the prevailing narrative. But Harari challenges that assumption. He argues that the agricultural revolution was, in many ways, a trap. It led to harder work, a less diverse diet, and increased susceptibility to disease.
Wait, so you're telling me that farming was actually bad for us?
It's a different way to look at it.
Yeah. I'm having a hard time wrapping my head around that. I mean, it led to the development of civilization, didn't it?
It undoubtedly transformed human societies,
Right.
but whether it improved the quality of life for individual Homo sapiens is debatable. Think about it. Hunter-gatherers had a varied diet and more free time.
Right.
Farmers, on the other hand, were tied to the land, vulnerable to famine, and had to work incredibly hard to survive.
Okay, so if farming was such a hard bargain, why did our ancestors make the switch? Did they just wake up one day and decide to plant some wheat and see what happens?
It was a gradual process, a slow shift over generations, driven by a combination of factors. Probably environmental changes might have made foraging more difficult,
Right.
or perhaps population pressure forced people to find new ways to produce food. But once we committed to agriculture, there was no turning back. Our populations exploded, and we became dependent on farming for our survival.
So in a way, did we domesticate wheat? Or did we domesticate
It makes you think, huh? It's kind of a chilling thought.
It's a fascinating question Harari poses, and it makes you reconsider the traditional narrative of human progress. But let's move on from the farm for now and delve into a world of empires, conquests, and the rise of even grander imagined realities. So as we move from the agricultural revolution into the rise of empires, one of the most remarkable things is humans managed to build vast, complex societies, despite lacking the biological instincts for large-scale cooperation. How did we do it? Well, Harari argues that it's thanks to those imagined realities we talked about earlier, those shared myths and beliefs that bind us together.
So from gossip around the campfire to the grand narratives of empires, seems like storytelling has played a pretty significant role in our journey. But what about practical matters? Like, didn't writing systems also emerge around this time?
Absolutely. Writing was a game changer.
Right.
Initially, it was primarily used for record keeping, tracking trade, and codifying laws, but the ability to store and transmit information outside the human brain was revolutionary, I can imagine. No more relying on memory alone to pass down knowledge or maintain complex social structures.
Precisely. But Harari points out that the real breakthrough wasn't just the act of writing itself, but the development of systems for organizing and retrieving information.
Okay.
Think about libraries, archives, dictionaries.
Right.
These were all crucial for making written knowledge truly useful.
It's like the ancient equivalent of search engines.
Exactly.
Without them, all those scrolls and clay tablets would have been much harder to navigate. So, with writing as a tool, empires could expand their reach, maintain order, and solidify their power.
But wasn't there also a lot of violence and oppression involved in building these empires?
There's no denying the darker side of empires, the conquests, the exploitation, the suppression of local cultures. But Harari argues that it's more nuanced than simply, empires bad, everyone else good.
Yeah.
The reality is that most cultures today are the product of imperial legacies, a complex tapestry of influences and adaptations. So it's not so simple as going back to some pure pre-imperial culture.
Exactly. Human history is a tangled web of interactions and influences. Trying to untangle those threads and find some pristine, untouched culture is virtually impossible.
Wow. Food for thought. So we have empires on the rise, writing systems evolving, and this complex interplay of cultures. What other major forces are shaping human history at this point?
Well, amidst all this, we see the emergence of another powerful force.
Okay.
Universal religions. Think about Buddhism, Christianity, Islam.
Right.
These belief systems transcended local gods and spirits and offered a universal vision of the cosmos and humanity's place within it.
It's a pretty significant shift, moving from tribal deities to a single god,
Yeah.
or Buddha, or a universal principle. What drove that shift?
Well, Harari connects this rise of universal religions to another fascinating concept,
Go.
the emergence of money.
Money. Okay, now we're really diving deep. What does money have to do with religion?
More than you might think. Money, like religion, is an imagined reality.
Okay.
It only has value because we collectively agree that it does, whether it's a cowrie shell, a gold coin,
Right.
or a dollar bill. It's just a symbol.
But even though it's a symbol, money has a huge impact on our lives,
Yeah.
right? It allows us to trade, build economies,
Yeah,
even wage wars.
precisely. And Harari argues that money, like those universal religions we were just talking about, has this incredible power to connect people across vast distances and cultures. It creates a shared system of trust, even among strangers.
That makes sense. If you think about it, using money requires a certain level of faith.
Yeah.
You have to trust that. This piece of paper
Yeah.
or this digital entry in your bank account
Yeah.
actually represents something of value.
Right.
But that trust can be fragile, can't it? I mean, we've seen financial crises, economic collapses. It seems like money can be a source of instability too.
You're absolutely right. Harari doesn't shy away from the dark side of money, the potential for corruption, exploitation, inequality. Think about the Atlantic slave trade, a horrific chapter in human history, driven by greed and the pursuit of profit.
It's a stark reminder that even something as seemingly abstract as money can have devastating real-world consequences.
It all comes down to the values we attach to money and how we choose to use it. But now, let's shift gears and move into a period of even more radical transformation, the Industrial Revolution.
The age of machines, factories, and mass production. It seems like a world away from those ancient empires we were just discussing.
It is a significant leap forward, and the Industrial Revolution marks a fundamental shift in how humans interact with energy. Before, we were largely limited to the power of our own muscles, along with resources like wood, water, and wind. But with the invention of the steam engine, fueled by coal, we tapped into a vast new reservoir of energy.
It's almost like we discovered a new power source, a new way to harness the forces of nature.
Exactly. And that trend continued, didn't it? From coal to oil to nuclear power. We've become increasingly reliant on these concentrated forms of energy.
It's like we've become energy junkies, always seeking out bigger and more powerful sources to fuel our growing demands. But Harari suggests that we're actually swimming in an ocean of potential energy, solar, wind, even the gravitational pull of the moon, driving the tides. The challenge is developing the technology to harness those forces more effectively.
He makes a great point. We have this abundance of energy all around us, but we need better pumps to tap into it. But all this energy abundance has come with a cost, particularly in terms of our relationship with the animal world.
You're talking about industrial farming. Yeah, that's a tough one. We become so efficient at producing meat, eggs, and dairy, but often at the expense of animal welfare.
Harari highlights this ethical dilemma. We've become very good at meeting the physical needs of animals in industrial farms, providing food, water, shelter, but we often neglect their psychological needs, their need for social interaction, freedom of movement, and the ability to express their natural behaviors.
It's almost as if we've created this sterile, controlled environment for them, but it's devoid of any real quality of life.
That's the tragedy of it. We've prioritized efficiency and output over the well-being of these sentient creatures. It raises some serious questions about our responsibility to the animal world in this age of mass production. But we've come a long way from those early farms of the agricultural revolution, haven't we?
We certainly have. We've journeyed from foraging to farming to factories, from small bands of hunter-gatherers to sprawling empires and globalized economies. It makes you wonder, where do we go from here?
That's where we'll pick up. In the final part of our deep dive, we'll explore how consumerism, the standardization of time, and the rise of states and markets have shaped our lives, our values, and our very sense of self in the modern world.
Welcome back to the deep dive. We've covered a lot, haven't we?
We have.
From our hunter-gatherer ancestors to empires, to the revolutions of agriculture and industry.
Yeah. It's been quite a journey.
It really has. So now, let's turn our attention to the modern world. how it's shaped by all those historical forces
Sounds good.
that we've been talking about.
Okay.
One of the most defining characteristics of the modern world is consumerism. This insatiable desire for more stuff, for constant upgrades and new experiences.
Yeah.
It's a complete reversal of the frugality that defines so much of human history.
I completely agree. We are bombarded with messages.
To buy, buy.
It's true. I remember that quote that Harari shared from a cereal box. Sometimes you need a treat. Telma understands.
Oh, yeah.
It's funny, but also a little unsettling when you think about how deeply ingrained consumerism has become.
It's not just about buying products either. It's about buying into a whole ideology, a way of life.
Yeah.
And this consumerist mindset is closely tied to another modern phenomenon, the standardization of time.
Time, huh? Yeah, we're obsessed with schedules, deadlines, being on time.
It's true.
It's all thanks to clocks and the demands of industrial society.
It's like we've traded the natural rhythms of the sun and the seasons for the tyranny of the clock. Like, I set an alarm to remind myself to drink water.
Seriously.
Yeah.
That's a perfect example of how time has become this artificial grid that we impose on our lives. We're constantly rushing, trying to squeeze more and more into every hour. It's so different from the more leisurely pace of life in pre-industrial society.
Yeah, it's true. And it's not just our relationship with time that's changed.
Right.
Harari also points to a shift in our social structures. For most of human history, family and community were the bedrock of society. They provided support, identity, belonging. But in the modern world, those bonds have weakened, haven't they?
Definitely. We're more individualistic, more mobile, more reliant on the state for security and on the market for our needs. We've gained some freedom and autonomy, but often at the expense of social cohesion. We're more likely to see ourselves as consumers than as citizens, as members of a global marketplace rather than a local community.
So we're free from the constraints of traditional communities, but we're also more isolated, more on our own. It's a bit of a mixed bag.
It is. It's the paradox of modernity. We have unprecedented access to information, goods, and services, but we also face new challenges like social isolation, economic inequality, and a sense of meaninglessness.
Right.
Which brings us to the big question. Are we happier with all this progress, all this material abundance?
Right.
Are we actually better off than our ancestors?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is.
It seems like there should be a straightforward answer.
You'd think so, right?
But I have a feeling it's more complicated than that.
You're right. It is. Harari dives into the science of happiness.
Okay.
And what he finds is that happiness isn't simply about material wealth or even physical well-being. It's about expectations.
So it's all relative. Like, if we expect to have smartphones, air conditioning, and 2-week vacations every year, we're going to be less happy if we don't have those things.
Right.
Even if we're objectively better off than people living just a few centuries ago.
Exactly. Happiness is about the gap between what we have and what we think we should have. That's why winning the lottery doesn't always make people happier. In the long run, their expectations inflate along with their bank accounts.
It's like a happiness treadmill. We keep running and running, but we never really get anywhere.
It really is. And it leads to another fascinating question that Harari explores. What happens when we combine this drive, this relentless drive for progress, this desire for more and better with our ever-growing technological power?
Okay, now we're getting into some really interesting territory. We've got designer babies, artificial intelligence, immortality.
We're on the verge of being able to manipulate our biology, our minds, even our nature in ways that were once science fiction. Harari calls it the Gilgamesh Project.
The Gilgamesh Project.
Yeah, named after the ancient Mesopotamian king who sought immortality.
So we're playing God. It's exciting and terrifying all at the same time.
Yeah.
But what if? What if we create something we can't control? A superintelligence that outthinks us, or a genetically engineered elite that sees the rest of us as inferior.
Those are the questions, aren't they?
Yeah.
The ethical dilemmas that we face as we venture into this uncharted territory. And Harari doesn't offer easy answers. He leaves us with a final provocative question. What does it mean to be human in an age where we can redefine our very essence?
Wow. That's a lot to think about. We've covered so much ground today, from the savannas of Africa to the brink of a transhuman future.
Yeah, it's been an incredible journey.
It really has.
And as Harari reminds us, the future of humanity is not predetermined. It's up to us to write the next chapter.
That's a powerful thought. We've explored the past, we've examined the present, and now we're faced with the challenge of shaping the future. It's daunting, but also incredibly exciting. And on that note, I think we'll wrap up our deep dive into Sapiens. We've only scratched the surface, but hopefully we've sparked your curiosity. Pick up a copy of Sapiens, do some research, and keep those deep diving minds engaged. Thanks for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring.